Sophie Mashimbia lives in Shimaa, a village of 800 households in northern South Africa. She is a widow with 12 children and grandchildren. No one in her family has a steady income.
So how do you live? Sometimes people will ask the children to do odd jobs for them, or will help neighbors, and they'll give us grain to grind food. Do you have a business here? How could I do a business if I don't have even a single cent? If you were the police and you wanted to arrest me for not having 2 cents, you could take me.
There are few jobs in Shimaa. Men move away to major cities to look for work. What they earn is often not enough. It falls to the women to generate enough income to support the family.
SEF, the Small Enterprise Foundation, has come to Shimaa to offer loans to low-income women like Sophie, who want to create or expand small businesses. In the past, SEF was not always sure it was reaching the right women.
Even when SEF was set up in 1991, its main objective was to reach the very poor, to get them out of poverty. We realized that the whole objective was not achieved in terms of reaching the very poor.
A study commissioned by SEF revealed that only a third of its clients were among the poorest 30% of village women. Staff members discovered that when microloans were made available to all women, the poorest would often stay away.
If you try and mix the very poor with the non-poor, the very poor normally will leave the program. The very poor feel very threatened by the well-off. The very poor do not have confidence. They don't trust themselves.
Unless you say that this is a program for the poorest don't think it's for them. If we don't start with the poorest, then we won't reach the poorest.
170, 190.
In 1995, SEF launched a new effort to reach the poorest 30% of women in a village. They created a separate loan program just for them. They called the program Chamasano, which in northern Sotho means working together. Many of Chamasano's borrowers pursue only the most basic income-generating activities.
Most of these clients are more like survivors. Sometimes they collect wood, firewood for some other people. Sometimes they clean for other people, maybe for nothing except food, so that they can get something to live for that day.
Everybody can be economically active, if only they have the resources to do that. I mean, there are many people who are not economically active but would like to be. They just simply don't have the money to start the business. And that's our starting point.
In creating Chamasano, SEF faced a major challenge: how to accurately determine who is truly the poorest and who is not. Door-to-door visits and personal interviews are too time-consuming and too open to efforts at deception. And visual indicators such as housing, used elsewhere very effectively, are not reliable in South Africa. Many people work far away from home. They may own better housing near their jobs. And in a country with high unemployment rates, people with comfortable homes can easily lose their jobs and fall into poverty. After much trial and error, SEF adapted a technique used by development professionals in other contexts: Participatory Wealth Ranking.
Participatory wealth ranking takes the community and gets them to participate in determining who is the very poor in their own community, using their own understanding of what poverty is in their own context.
In the village of Shimaa, this process has just begun.
Thank you. We thank you. Before we start, I would like to ask your chief to say a few words to introduce us.
You are welcome. You are our guest. We give thanks that you will give us this service. You are welcome to do your work. We thank you.
Johannes Matsika, coordinator of the wealth ranking process, describes Chamasano and its goals to Chimawusa's residents.
We do the introduction of why we're there and what we'll be doing in the coming 3 days. And then we ask the community to divide themselves into sections. So if a village has like 4 or 5 sections, and people of each section will draw a map of that particular section.
Here is where we are in the church. Do you see?
Yes.
This is the street that goes this way, and this one is the one that goes that way. When you pass this church, what comes after it?
The important thing about that community meeting is that it's representative of not necessarily all interest groups in the community, but at least geographically the whole community.
Even though this one has a big yard, you still write just one number. Do you understand? Here's number 3 and number 4.
Often we work with chalk on the cement floor or using stick on sand or whatever. But essentially there has to be a process where whatever's done can be erased, so people can erase the mistake.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Write the 6th one here.
The map makers number each household. The numbers are also listed on a separate sheet of paper, along with the name of the family who lives there.
Wait, we skipped this household. Which one is this? Noah George.
Once the map makers agree that the chalk version is accurate, a paper version is created.
Who lives here?
Masaluke.
Yes, write Masaluke.
The number and name of each household is also written on an index card.
Who is this person? Magezi Bayoi? Oh, Magezi Mashimbe.
Do you all live near each other? No, just the 2 of us. No one else lives near you? Not here. Do you live near each other?
When a section is completed, volunteers are recruited to take part in the next step of the wealth ranking process.
3 to 5 groups of people from that particular section will sit down and sort the cards.
Basically, if there's enough people at the mapping, we'll use the people at the mapping. Otherwise, we'll ask people to invite other people to join.
Let us agree. You 3, when you get home this afternoon, you find at least one more person. There can be between 4 and 6 persons. No lower than 4, no higher than 6 or 7. We meet at 9 in the morning, not any later. We meet at Mungo's.
It is the next day. Soli Mabunda, a Chamasano staff member, arrives at the first of 3 ranking sessions. He begins by helping the women to decide for themselves just what defines a family as poor. He uses stones to illustrate 2 families, both existing on very small pensions.
This is one household. It's a big family. Here in this family, there's only 3 people.
This one will be better off. The other one is like me. If you have many children on your pension, it's worth nothing.
Solly moves on to 2 index cards from a stack representing all the households in this section of the village.
When you consider Shitakwa and Maluzana Masinge, which household is better off?
Maluzana and Shidagwa? Maluzana.
Maluzana? Why?
Their children have businesses at least.
What about Shitakwa?
No business.
Now, since you say the Maluzanas are better off, we'll place them here. And Shitakwa, we'll place them here.
Then, the participants begin the ranking process.
Now, who can read here? Take the cards and read the names like I've been doing.
Shaka Ngoberi. Put him over there.
But he's got a wife.
He's not working.
How do they eat?
He gathers and sells wood.
Participatory wealth ranking is about participation. So within the group, more detailed discussion takes place about individuals in a sense of whether she works, whether she has got a job, whether she has many children, whether she is having a husband, and so on, before the card is put, whether in the poor or in the rich.
Within an hour or two, the cards are sorted. Solly tabulates the results. First, the number 100 is divided by the total number of stacks, in this case 6. The result is 16.7. The number 1 is assigned to the stack representing the wealthiest, a 2 to the next wealthiest group, and so on. The poorest stack becomes number 6. Then, each of these numbers is multiplied times 16.7. The totals are rounded off. In this way, a person in the poorest stack will receive a score of 100, 6 times 16.7. A person in the next poorest stack will receive a score of 84, and so on.
Once Solly has recorded the scores, he sets off to his next appointment with another group of volunteers.
Shidakwa, where do we rent them?
Put them with Sibia.
Where do they work?
In Johannesburg.
They work, their children work, and the grannies are pensioners. Things are good.
Do they throw away bread?
Yes, our children run and pick it up.
When the second group's work is done, Solly tabulates their results as well. This time, there are 7 stacks, so 100 is divided by 7. The result is 14.3. The wealthiest group is assigned number 1, the next wealthiest group, number 2, and the poorest group, number 7. Each number is multiplied by 14.3. Once again, the totals are rounded off. As before, a person in the poorest group receives a score of 100, 7 times 14.3. A person in the next poorest stack gets a score of 86. Then, Solly heads off to a third ranking session.
How does it compare to Kilibaka?
Kilibaka is better off.
Yes, he's better.
Rank him here.
Each member will be ranked 3 times, at least 3 times. And at the end of the day, the consistent agreement about who is very poor and who is not very poor in the particular community will be done, averaging the scores that were determined by the 3 to 5 groups that have sorted the cards.
If one household has been placed in the poorest pile 3 times, that is consistent. If one house had been placed in the poorest pile twice and the second poorest pile once, that is still consistent.
If a woman receives 100, an 86, and another 100, her final average score is 95. She easily qualifies for a Chamasano loan. A woman with a 50, a 43, and a 25 has an average score of 39. She does not qualify for a loan. A woman with a 67, a 72, and a 63 has an average of 67. Her status is borderline and depends on how many women score above and below her.
Ranking each member of the village at least 3 times helps avoid mistakes and exposes any attempts at deception.
The whole process of checking the consistency enables us to find out if anybody has been trying to manipulate the answers. Because it's almost impossible for 3 different groups to essentially, should we say, fabricate the information.
Solly's work with the wealth ranking groups is finished. He delivers the results to Johannes Matsika, his supervisor.
Which section is this? Section D. Okay, Section D. How many households does it have?
The supervisor must cross-check all the results. If he is not happy, he might reject the results. It means another wealth ranking has to be done for that particular section.
The coordinator will also make the first decision in terms of cut-off point and who's eligible to join the program.
CEF has shaped participatory wealth ranking into an efficient process.
To do a village with 800 households, 3 practitioners and 1 supervisor could do it within 3 to 4 days.
The concept of participatory wealth ranking is very, very simple. But the problem is it's deceptively simple. That to make it work well is difficult. There are many steps involved in the process. People do need to be trained in. It's something which is fairly complex to learn. But once it's in place, it's something which can function very easily.
To ensure efficiency, CEF is willing to accept a small degree of inaccuracy.
Being a microfinance organisation that is concerned about financial sustainability means that we have to optimise our resources. To be 95% accurate is probably half as costly as being 100% accurate. That those last few percentage, those last few people that you're not quite sure about can double the cost of your inputs. The people that we can be most sure about through the wealth ranking process are the poorest, who are our core target audience.
Any woman who feels she is poor enough to qualify for one of Chamasano's loans has the opportunity to appeal the results.
Before she participates in the program, a thorough check into her house has to be done. It doesn't happen very often. There's a consistent agreement mostly in terms of who is poor and who is rich.
Now that CEF has identified the poorest 30% of Shimawusa's residents, the real work can begin. Beauty Shipalana, a CEF field worker, walks from house to house, calling on every woman who qualifies for a Chamasano loan.
We are here to help you with small loans, so you can better your life, buy food, send your children to school. The loans are between 100 and 500 rands.
What if we formed a group and I started a business, but then became bankrupt? What happens?
When you start selling and begin to pay back your loans, each of you puts 2 rand into a savings account each time. You can use this savings if you find yourself without money.
We make a huge effort to motivate them to join the program. It takes a while for them to be convinced. They have a lot of questions. Why me? Why not the person next door?
Suppose I took a loan, but then I pass away. What happens?
If you die, then your loan is forgiven. No one has to pay.
Even in a project that is specifically targeted for the very poor, you still have to make a lot of efforts to get them to participate in the program.
CEF relies heavily on its trained and dedicated staff.
We are giving loans out. Every loan that we give out must be paid back. At the same time, we require our field workers to be social workers by trying to say, what are the problems that you're facing in the house? Maybe husband abuse or whatever. And they must confront those situations. They must go to the houses and talk to the clients, counsel them, help them where possible. So they must have a bank worker brain and a social worker heart.
In Chamasano, we monitor every single borrower. With each borrower, we ask questions about what is their change of lives in terms of housing, education, and so on.
Impact studies indicate that the overwhelming majority of women who remain in the program for at least 2 years experience significant long-term improvements.
Their quality of living changes. They send their children to school. A lot of people are not going hungry anymore. And you've got a small number of people who are the miracle people. They've really taken off and really, there's been huge changes. But it's not a quick fix. It's not a miracle solution.
CEF's general microloan program is self-sustaining. Chamasano is still quite small, but CEF's goal is that it, too, will become self-sufficient.
In Chamasano, it takes longer because of the motivation that is required for clients. Clients join more slowly than they do in our other program. The other thing is they'll start off with very small loan sizes, and then slowly they'll begin to take larger loan sizes. But after 2 years or 3 years, people are almost at the point that they are in our other program. And then you can almost move at the same speed as in the other program.
20 rand. 20 rand. 20 rand. 40.
Chamasano's staff believes that participatory wealth ranking holds great promise for programs in other parts of the world.
Participatory wealth ranking can be adjusted from one country to the other, or from one context to the other, from one community to the other. PWR is being adjusted already. The one that we are using is not exactly the same as the participatory wealth ranking that other people use in other countries for different reasons.
The main thing for it to work is that people have to know each other. They have to be willing to discuss wealth and discuss other people's wealth in their community. Wealth ranking can be an extremely powerful approach, but if you're going to use it, you have to make the commitment to spending the time thinking about why it's working, why it's not working, and actually adapting it to the local context. It's not something you can take off the shelf and say, these are the steps, let's put them into practice, it will work. It needs some thought.
For CEF, participatory wealth ranking is an important tool in a campaign with very high stakes.
In South Africa, we achieved liberation, but there are still millions and millions of people that live below poverty, and some of these people live in extreme poverty. So we cannot just say the war is over. This is still another war.